Next up, what can we learn from a country that is consistently ranked one of the happiest places in the world to live? What can we learn from a country that is called one of the wealthiest and most inclusive by the World Bank? We're going to learn from our next speaker, Javad Mushtaq, in his talk, The Nordic-Pakistan Connection. Javad is from Norway, and he has Pakistani roots. He's only 30 and is already a recognized innovation leader, serial social entrepreneur, investor, and a World Economic Forum global shaper. He is the founder and CEO of GM Ventures, and he's working on launching his own startup generator and investment vehicle in Pakistan. Please put a warm welcome for Javad Mushtaq.
Pakistan, how are you feeling today? Do you want me to go back to Norway and talk about this Pakistan? How are you feeling today? No, we need to try again. Pakistan, how are you feeling today? This is the Pakistan I'm talking about. Let me share a story. There's a small country up in the north called Norway. And for hundreds of years, the country has been known for being Vikings, being very white, few people who have been moving abroad. A cold country up in the north. In the early 60s and the late 60s, this country was about to change. Because Norway found oil in 69, and because the Pakistanis found Norway in 71. My dad was part of the large immigration wave in the 70s. He was from Sialkot, and he moved from Punjab in Pakistan at the age of 21 to pursue a better life for himself and his future family. He was a humble young man. He was educated and an engineer. And he packed his bag, he packed his chappal, he took his luggage, and he left the country. First to Germany, then to Sweden, then he ended up in the core north of Norway. Even though my father was educated and engineer, he was struggling to find relevant jobs. He worked at restaurants, he worked at hotels. He did everything he could do in order for himself to make a future. But he was an entrepreneur at heart. One day, he decided to move to this very small town in the eastern part of Norway called Halden, with 30,000 inhabitants, and he started his own venture. He started then a few ventures, first in a computer side. Then he started importing leathers from Sialkot in Pakistan, selling them to Norwegians. It didn't really work that well. And then later on, he started a restaurant, and he doesn't know how to cook. I don't know why he started that, but obviously it was this entrepreneurial spirit that he had. So he moved back to Pakistan in the early 80s. He married my mom. My mom at that time had never been outside Pakistan, left the country, had never seen snow in her life, moved to the coldest country up in north in a brand new life with a strange man that she didn't know. These people, my parents and the Pakistan diaspora in Norway, these people are what I like to call the invisible heroes who lay the foundation for people like myself to be able to get the opportunity to succeed. I'm born and raised in an average-sized Pakistani family. We're 8 siblings. And in the small town of Halden. And we don't come from very privileged backgrounds, so I had to start working at a very early stage. I got my first job at the age of 13 as a newspaper delivery boy. I used my first couple of salaries to be able to buy a cell phone. Does anyone remember that phone, Nokia 3510? Polyphonic ringtones, monochromic display, the top of and the state of the art of technology. Those were some times. So I bought that phone, and I used it for around 6 months' time. And then I managed to lose it in the water. And you can imagine a young boy who's worked very hard to be able to afford this, losing in the water. It was obviously a very sad day. So I went on to a classified ads website, and I started looking for an old phone. And I used some of my Pakistani negotiation skills, or Pakistani haggling, and I got a very good deal for a cell phone. I used it for around 6 months' time, and then I managed to sell it for more than I bought it for. I thought, aha, this is a business opportunity. Between the age of 13 and 15, I've bought and sold more than 150 phones. Between 15 and 17, I started 2 ventures. First of them was on mobile content, because at that time you had to buy mobile content for $1 and $2 per piece, for ringtones, for background pictures. And for me, that was too much. I need to find an alternative solution. So I went online, I started learning coding, went with a friend, we launched a website where you could upload your own content and download it for a tenth of the price. Now this went viral. After a month's time, we got 50,000 views. The problem was at the age of 15, didn't know much about copyright infringement. So was a lot of people uploading a lot of illegal content on my server, and an American company contacted me and said that if you don't shut down your website within the next 2 weeks, we're going to sue you. When you're 15 years old, you get a bit scared. You shut down the website, and then you start a new one. And this is the mentality. Your background was not going to be a limitation for you to be able to succeed wherever you are. So when you're living in a very small country like Norway and a very small city like Halden, with very few immigrants and almost no Pakistanis, you face a lot of discrimination. You meet people who don't really believe in you. And even though I had big ambitions, I was bold and I wanted to do something big in life, my teachers and my co-students didn't have the same faith in me. They told me to reduce my ambitions, told me to be something which was more worthy of people with my background, be a cleaner or something like that. And when I delivered my test and I did better than my co-students, my teacher often took my test back and told me that I can't believe that somebody with your background had got this mark. I need to go back and recheck the test. When you face these kind of issues, you have basically 2 options. One, you get frustrated and you answer back without creating any change. Or 2, you continue to perform, you work twice as hard to get half the way, and you let your performance and your result be the answer to them. And that became a motivation. In 2007, when I moved to Oslo, the capital, I could no longer be good. I had to be exceptional. 2010, best business student across all schools in Norway. 2011, part of the team which won Harvard Business School Project Award across 100 schools globally. 2013, best thesis award, and so on, and so on, and so on. Even though I've performed and I've delivered the results above expectation, there was still this sentiment in the country that my background was going to be a limitation. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because my parent had a different background. So for me, that was a big challenge, and I left the country. I moved first to the US, in New York, then later to Houston, before I moved back to Norway, started the energy sector, moved out again, lived in Malaysia, in UK, in Brazil. And the more I was traveling, the more I started understanding that Norway had really misunderstood it at that time. People like myself, who understands multiple cultures, who bring something in addition, who speak more than 5 languages, are really the asset that countries like Norway and the Nordics need. Because we're small, export-driven countries, we need to work with the world. And that's exactly my point when I moved back and started working with that. And in this journey, I also started reconnecting with my Pakistani roots. I started feeling more proud of being a Pakistani. I started reconnecting, I started moving, and I started seeing how can I be a good ambassador for Pakistanis in the Nordics and Norway? And what footprint do I want to leave behind? So I left my corporate job. I started working with social enterprises, later on with investments, and then I also started working with the Norwegian government as part of the expert committee. Often in those places, the only person with Pakistani background and the only person who was 10 to 20 years younger than everybody else in the room. But I was qualified and I was good enough. And for me, that became a mantra, to really help support the diaspora in the country, to represent them in the best possible way, but also to represent Pakistani in all the global stages that I went. And that resulted in last year that the Prime Minister awarded me the Norwegian Pakistani of the Year, and this year I was recognized as one of the most influential Norwegian Pakistanis in the past 50 years of Norwegian history. Now this has become very important for me, And I really want to reconnect, and I want to tell you and talk about the role of the diaspora and the diaspora in the development of Pakistan. Why Norway? Why are we even talking about Norway? It's a very small country, 5.5 million people, but it's often ranked #1 in most of the indexes. In Human Development Index, 9 out of 10 years in a row, it has been on top. It's a very well-functioning country. But most of all, I think it's important because we're rich. It's a very rich country. It's very, very rich. It's 10 trillion NOK rich, or 170 trillion Pakistan rupees rich, which is the biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world. It's bigger than the Emirati. It's bigger than the Middle Eastern. It's the biggest in the world. And they spend a lot of money outside the country. And some of that money needs to go to Pakistan. Why is Pakistan relevant for Norway? There's a very big diaspora in Norway and the Nordics from Pakistan. And the wave started in the 70s. They've started establishing themselves as relevant players. Right now, we're more than 40,000 people, less than 1%. In the Nordics, we're about 100,000 Pakistanis. If you include UK as well, then we're talking about more than 1 million Pakistanis. The diaspora is growing. They're getting significant roles. And they have something they can contribute back to in the country as well. And also, Telenor. Single biggest FDI in Pakistan is done by a Norwegian company, Telenor. And the role Telenor is playing in supporting the development here can also be key in the diaspora playing a role. Now, what can the diaspora bring for economic development and economic prosperity? It's not always about capital. We've talked a lot about capital in this conference, about venture capital, how we can support it, but it's about the ecosystem. We can also bring the competence, the capital, and the access to network. And I want to be spearheading the Nordic effort on bringing the diaspora to Pakistan and bringing Pakistanis to the Nordic. So we're launching 3 initiatives now. I'm going to talk very briefly about the 3 initiatives. The first one is a formalized Nordic-Pakistan collaboration. We're going to work with the Nordic countries. We're going to work more on exchanging Norwegian entrepreneurs and investors to Pakistan, looking at Pakistan as a potential market. We're going to start inviting more entrepreneurs and investors to the Nordic countries and look at that as a potential market. And we're starting working with the municipalities to see if there are Pakistanis who can work in supporting the development of Norway and the Nordics. We're going to start working on early stage in Pakistan. There's been a lot of talk about venture capital, and you need a pipeline of startups in order for us to succeed in the ecosystem here. But we have a lot of talents. We have 210 million people in Pakistan. 60% are below the age 25. A lot of those, even though if they haven't started a startup yet, have the potential of starting something, generating jobs, and be part of economic development. So we're going to work in the early stage. We're going to work with generating startups. We're going to start with talents and ideas, and that will fuel up a pipeline for venture capitalists in this country. And last but not least, we're going to start working on the Diaspora Investment Collective in the Nordics. We're going to start inviting a lot of the diaspora who has capital, who wants to be part of investing. It can be private, it can be institutional, and really spearheading that money flow to Pakistan. One of the case products I'm going to talk about is Smart City, and for those who are interested in doing something in Norway and have something to work around smart cities, we have a pilot project which we can start in the spring. We are right now in the midst of an unparalleled opportunity in Pakistan. We have the opportunity to create waves. There's a lot of efforts all around the world and in Pakistan happening. A lot of those ocean drops will create a big ocean, it will create big waves. And I think the diaspora can play a key role in it. Let's build the new Pakistan together. Thank you for me.